On May 25, 1961, President John F. Kennedy stood before Congress and asked the United States to send a man to the moon before the decade was over. That promise gave the whole country a destination. It changed laboratories, factories, classrooms, and the way American children imagined the future. But while the nation looked toward the moon, your mother was looking at a $20 bill. That bill had to feed your family of 5. It had to become breakfasts before school, lunches wrapped in wax paper, suppers after a long work day, and something warm on Sunday. Stay with number 10, because 2 dozen eggs and a pound of bacon will become far more than breakfast. At number 5, you will see how your mother divided 2 pounds of hamburger almost down to the ounce. And near the very end, number 1 will reveal why the last 96 cents went towards something the family could technically live without. This was not a cart filled by magic. It was a plan, measured in pennies, leftovers, and time. Subscribe to America Retold, and let us bring another piece of your family's America back to the table. The prices in this trip are built from national retail averages recorded for 1961. A few cents could change from one town to another, and a newspaper special could lower the total. Your mother's cupboard also still held the things she did not buy every week: salt, pepper, baking powder, a little mustard, perhaps cinnamon in a tin that had been there for years. With those basics waiting at home, this cart comes to about $19.93. 7 cents remain in her coin purse. For this trip, picture 2 parents and 3 school-age children. Here is what that $20 grocery trip could buy for your family of 5. Number 15. Flour and cornmeal. Across the South, the Midwest, and much of rural America, flour and cornmeal were not side ingredients. They were the quiet machinery of the kitchen. They turned thin meals into filling ones and made an empty table look cared for. Your mother would buy 1 5-pound sack of wheat flour for 56 cents and 1 pound of cornmeal for 13 cents. Total cost 69 cents. From the flour, she could make 2 pans of biscuits, thicken gravy, coat the chicken, and stir together a small batch of apple turnovers. From the cornmeal, she could bake an 8-inch skillet of cornbread beside the beans. She would cut the shortening into 2 cups of flour with a fork, add milk a little at a time, and bake the biscuits for 12 to 15 minutes. The kitchen would fill with the dry, toasted smell of wheat. You would hear the crust crack when one was pulled apart. Steam would rise from the soft center. 69 cents did not merely buy grain. It bought the ability to make the rest of the cart feel larger than it was. Number 14. Oats, rice, and macaroni. In 1961, a careful pantry crossed regional lines. Oats belonged to cold mornings, rice stretched broth, macaroni carried tomato sauce and whatever meat remained. Your mother would buy 1 18-ounce box of rolled oats for 22 cents, 1 pound of long-grain rice for 21 cents, and 1 pound of macaroni for 24 cents. Total cost about 67 cents. On Monday, she simmered 1.5 cups of oats with 3 cups of water and 1 cup of milk for 5 minutes. Later, 1 cup of rice cooked under a lid for 20 minutes, then went into chicken soup. The macaroni boiled for 8 minutes before meeting canned tomatoes and the last portion of hamburger. You smelled the oats before entering the kitchen. A spoon scraped the saucepan. Macaroni made a soft sound as it moved through red sauce. For 67 cents, your mother bought 3 ways to help all 5 leave the table satisfied. Number 13. Sugar and shortening. Post-war shelves offered cake mixes and packaged desserts, but your grandmother still knew the older arithmetic. Sugar and shortening could reappear in different forms for weeks. Your mother would pay 59 cents for 5 pounds of sugar and 90 cents for a 3-pound can of shortening. Total cost $1.49. She used 3 tablespoons of shortening for cornbread, 4 for biscuits, and half a cup for a simple apple crust. 2 cups of sliced apples, 1/4 cup of sugar, and cinnamon became dessert for 5 after 30 minutes in the oven. The remaining sugar sweetened oatmeal and coffee. Shortening gave off a faint savory smell in the cast iron skillet. Pie crust left flakes on the plate. Sugar clicked against the glass bowl. The measuring cup was always leveled with a knife. That $1.49 bought sweetness, but it also bought control. Your mother could decide when an ordinary day deserved a small celebration. Number 12. Bread, peanut butter, and jelly. A school lunch in 1961 often traveled in a metal box or brown paper sack. It had to survive a bus ride, a courtroom, and several hours beside a thermos. Your mother would buy 3 one-pound loaves of white bread for 63 cents, 1 jar of peanut butter for 56 cents, and 1 jar of grape jelly for 29 cents. Total cost, about $1.48. Each morning, she laid out 6 slices for 3 children. In less than 10 minutes, peanut butter went to the edges, so the jelly would not soak through. At 2 tablespoons per sandwich, 1 jar made about 15 modest lunches. Roast, chicken, or egg salad covered the other days. The knife dragged softly across the bread. Jelly shone purple under the kitchen light. Wax paper snapped around each sandwich. By noon, the bread was soft, and the peanut butter clung to the roof of your mouth. $1.48 also carried a quiet message. Your mother had risen early enough to make sure you were not hungry at school. Number 11. 3 gallons of milk. Milk held a special place in the post-war kitchen. It appeared at breakfast, beside supper, in biscuits, in gravy, and in every hope that growing children would grow strong. At the 1961 national average of about 25 cents a quart, your mother would spend roughly $2.95 for 3 gallons. It was the largest category in the cart. Those 3 gallons had to cover 7 days, so milk was portioned. Half a cup softened the oats, 1 cup went into biscuit dough. 5 small glasses stood beside supper. When a child asked for more, your mother checked the level before pouring. The refrigerator door opened with a heavy seal. Cold glass sweated on the table. Milk struck the bottom of a tumbler with a hollow sound and left a pale line on a child's upper lip. $2.95 was nearly 15% of the $20 bill. Your mother paid it because milk represented more than thirst. It represented hope. Now pause and look beyond the cart. $20 in 1961 was not loose change. Median family income was about $5,700 a year, or roughly $110 a week before taxes. For much of the year, the federal minimum wage for covered workers was $1 an hour. It rose to $1.15 in September. This trip could equal 17 to 20 hours of gross minimum wage work. That same year, the United States Department of Agriculture introduced 4 cost-based food plans, including an economy plan. The government was trying to answer the question your mother faced every week. How little money could still provide enough food? Price alone was never the answer. The plan required storage, cooking knowledge, and hours of labor. Your mother had to know which meal made broth, which leftovers kept safely, and which child could be persuaded to eat cabbage. The cart was only the beginning. Its real value appeared after she carried it through the front door. Number 10. 2 dozen eggs and 1 pound of bacon. Eggs were one of the most flexible foods in your grandmother's kitchen. They could begin the day, rescue the evening, bind a meatloaf, or turn stale bread into supper. Your mother would buy 2 dozen large eggs for about $1.15 and 1 pound of sliced bacon for 71 cents. Total cost, $1.86. Sunday breakfast might use 5 eggs and 5 bacon strips. The bacon cooked first. She saved 2 tablespoons of the drippings, then scrambled the eggs for 4 minutes in the same skillet. On Wednesday night, 6 more eggs became a supper omelette with bits of leftover roast and onion. Another egg held the meatloaf together. 4 hard-boiled eggs became lunch, filling with mustard. The rest waited for oatmeal mornings, baking, or the night when plans failed. The bacon hissed before the rest of the house was awake. Its smoky smell moved down the hallway. Eggshells tapped against the rim of a bowl. The yellow mixture folded softly under a spatula, carrying the browned flavor left in the pan. $1.86 bought breakfast. More importantly, it bought your mother a way to recover when the week did not go exactly as planned. Number 9. The produce that had to last. Fresh produce in 1961 changed with season and region. Your mother watched the weekly price because a good harvest could make potatoes and apples cheaper by autumn. She bought 10 pounds of potatoes for 63 cents, 3 pounds of apples for 52 cents, 3 pounds of bananas for 48 cents, 2 pounds of carrots for 32 cents, 2 pounds of onions for 21 cents, and 1 pound of cabbage for 9 cents. Total cost about $2.24. She planned the order of use. Bananas first, apples later, potatoes all week, 4 potatoes, 2 carrots, and 1 onion cooked with the chuck roast. Cabbage simmered for 15 minutes with bacon drippings. Soft apples became dessert. Potato peelings fell in long brown curls. Cabbage filled the house with its earthy smell. Apples snapped under the knife. For $2.24, your mother bought color and nourishment. She also bought a race against time, and she rarely allowed the food to win. Number 8. 13 cans for the shelf. The post-war pantry trusted the can. It was dependable through winter, payday delays, sick days, and evenings when fresh vegetables were gone. Your mother would buy 4 cans of cream-style corn for about 82 cents, 3 cans of green peas for 66 cents, 4 cans of tomatoes for 64 cents, and 2 cans of tomato soup for 25 cents. 13 cans cost about $2.37. She did not serve them all as they came. 1 can of corn was stirred into cornmeal batter. Peas joined chicken broth and rice. 2 cans of tomatoes simmered for 20 minutes with 3/4 of a pound of Hamburger and half the macaroni. Tomato soup became sauce when stretched with milk, or lunch when a child stayed home with a fever. The can opener bit into metal with a rough turning sound. Steam lifted from the saucepan. Creamed corn smelled sweet and warm. Tomatoes stained the wooden spoon red. On the pantry shelf, the remaining cans stood in a straight row. Each one a promise that an unexpected day would not become an empty supper. $2.37 bought convenience by 1961 standards. It also bought your mother something harder to measure. A little protection from surprise. Number 7. 2 pounds of dried beans. In 1961, dried beans connected family kitchens across several regions, though the seasoning changed. In the South, they met cornbread and bacon drippings. Farther west, onion and chili might lead. Your mother would pay 17 cents a pound. 2 pounds cost 34 cents. She rinsed 1 pound and soaked it overnight. The next morning she added 1 onion and a spoonful of saved bacon fat. The pot simmered for 2 to 3 hours. Half went beside cornbread. The rest became lunch or returned with sliced frankfurters for another supper. The lid clicked as the beans moved below it. Their earthy smell mixed with onion. Cornbread came out with a crisp brown rim, then drank up the broth in the bowl. 34 cents was one of the smallest costs in the cart, yet it carried a large lesson. Your grandmother knew dignity came from serving what you had, as though it deserved its place at the table. Number 6. A 3-pound frying chicken. By 1961, ready-to-cook frying chickens were becoming more common. Improved poultry production had lowered the price from the years when chicken was saved almost entirely for Sunday. At about 39 cents a pound, a 3-pound fryer cost roughly $1.16. Your mother cut it into pieces, coated them with flour, salt, and pepper, then browned them in shortening. The breast and 2 thighs became the first supper. 1 drumstick went to the youngest child. The remaining meat was pulled from the bone the next day. The carcass simmered for 1 hour with onion ends and a carrot. 1 cup of rice, 1 can of peas, and the leftover meat turned the broth into a second meal. A few spoonfuls moistened chicken sandwiches. Hot fat popped against the skillet. Flour turned golden. Later, stock clouded the kitchen windows and made the whole house smell patient and warm. $1.16 bought 1 chicken. Your mother's attention turned it into dinner, soup, sandwiches, and the belief that nothing useful had been wasted. Step back again, because that low-priced chicken belonged to a much larger change. Federal records show that food bought for the home became slightly cheaper during 1961. Supplies were plentiful. Farms used better seed, fertilizer, machinery, and livestock methods. Processors added automation. The supermarket looked abundant because the system behind it was moving more food with less labor. Inside your family's house, however, labor had not disappeared. It had changed hands. A factory could package the chicken efficiently, but your mother still planned 2 meals from its bones. A cannery could fill thousands of tins, but she still decided which can belonged to which day. The $20 result depended on soaking, simmering, saving grease, cooling leftovers, packing lunches, and washing the same skillet again. Nostalgia can hide that work. The table felt generous because your mother protected the family from the limits of the budget. Your mother may have called it simply making supper. In truth, each meal carried your mother's intelligence. She understood scarcity and refused to let it become the family's only story. Number 5. 2 pounds of hamburger. Ground beef was not treated as 5 separate patties when the budget had 5 mouths to feed. Your mother saw 2 pounds and immediately divided them into possibilities. At the 1961 average of about 51 cents a pound, 2 pounds cost roughly $1.02. She would use 1¼ pounds for meatloaf. Into the bowl went 1 egg, 2 slices of bread soaked in milk, a little onion, and several spoonfuls of canned tomato. She shaped it into a narrow loaf so every slice looked substantial. It baked for about 50 minutes. 5 slices were served that night. The smaller end pieces were saved for sandwiches. The remaining 3/4 pound became tomato macaroni. She browned it slowly, broke it into small pieces, added 2 cans of tomatoes, and folded in 1/2 pound of cooked macaroni. The meat appeared in every spoonful because it had been spread through the entire dish. You heard the fork press bread into the mixing bowl. The loaf released a rich smell as the tomato glaze darkened. The next night, macaroni clicked against enamel plates. $1.02 did not buy abundance by itself. Your mother created abundance by refusing to let the meat stand alone. Number 4. A 3-pound chuck roast. The Sunday roast was a powerful symbol in the family kitchen. It looked generous at the center of the table, even when your mother chose an economical cut and planned the leftovers first. Chuck roast averaged about 59 cents a pound in 1961. A 3-pound roast cost roughly $1.78. Your mother browned it for 10 minutes. Then she added 2 cups of water, 1 onion, 4 potatoes, and 2 carrots. Covered tightly, it cooked for nearly 3 hours. She served thin slices with potatoes and gravy. On Monday, the remaining meat was chopped with 2 potatoes and onion. It became hash for supper or sandwich filling. Even the cooking liquid was chilled, so the fat and broth could be saved. The roast made a low sound under the lid. Its smell gathered the family before anyone was called. A knife against the platter announced Sunday dinner. $1.78 bought the most expensive meat in the cart. What your family remembered was the feeling that Sunday still deserved a centerpiece. Number 3. 1 pound of Frankfurters. Frankfurters belonged to ball games, backyard grills, and quick Saturday lunches. In your mother's kitchen, they also bridged the last full meal and the next payday. 1 pound cost about 63 cents in 1961. Your mother could serve 5 in bread for lunch and slice the rest into beans. More often, she cut every Frankfurter into coins. The pieces browned for 5 minutes, then went into 1/2 pot of beans with onion and 1 spoonful of tomato. 1 pound of meat touched all 5 bowls. The knife made quick cuts on the board. The rounds curled in the skillet. Their salty smell made the beans seem richer. Children noticed the meat. Your mother noticed that the pot had fed all 5. 63 cents gave her speed on a tired evening and gave the children a supper that felt familiar, not economical. Sometimes care was a roast that cooked 3 hours. Sometimes it was a meal ready in 20 minutes. Number 2. 1 pound of margarine. Butter cost about 76 cents a pound in 1961. Margarine averaged less than 29 cents. For a family watching every dollar, the difference was too large to ignore. Your mother would buy 1 pound of margarine for about 29 cents. She softened it near the stove and spread it over breakfast toast. 4 potatoes boiled for 20 minutes, then received a few careful dots. 1 tablespoon helped onions brown. Another enriched the macaroni. A thin layer shone on warm cornbread. Used this way, 1 pound lasted through much of the week. The wrapper opened with a waxy crackle. A yellow square waited in the covered dish. It melted into the rough surface of a biscuit and gathered in the small hollows of mashed potatoes. Children rarely asked whether it was butter. They only knew the bread was warm and something golden was disappearing into it. 29 cents bought fat, flavor, and calories. It also showed how your mother made choices that were almost invisible at the table. Your family rarely saw the money she saved by passing the butter. That was the point. Her economy worked best when the meal was noticed and the sacrifice was not. Number 1. Coffee and 5 small chocolate bars. In your 1961 kitchen, the percolator often started before the children were dressed. This final purchase was not the most nutritious part of the cart. It kept the budget from feeling like punishment. Your mother would buy 1 pound of coffee for about 74 cents. She also added 5 small 1-ounce chocolate bars at 4.5 cents each. Together, they cost about 96 cents. Your mother measured 6 tablespoons of coffee and let the percolator work for about 7 minutes. A quiet bubble grew into the roasted smell that meant morning had started. Her cup often cooled beside her while she packed lunches. The chocolate did not vanish on the first day. 1 bar might go into each child's Friday lunch, with 2 saved for Sunday. Or all 5 could be broken after dinner, so all 5 received a piece. Paper wrappers made a bright sound. Chocolate softened against warm fingers. For a minute, your family forgot about portions. Those 96 cents mattered because your family could not live well on efficiency alone. Your grandmother knew memory needed a little sweetness. The final coins did not buy survival. They gave the children a reason to believe the week had contained something special. Now, place the entire order on the checkout counter. 5 pounds of flour, 1 pound of cornmeal, oats, rice, and macaroni, 5 pounds of sugar, 3 pounds of shortening, 3 loaves of bread, peanut butter and jelly, 3 gallons of milk, 2 dozen eggs, 1 pound of bacon, potatoes, apples, bananas, carrots, onions, and cabbage, 13 cans, 2 pounds of dried beans, a frying chicken, 2 pounds of hamburger, a chuck roast, frankfurters, margarine, coffee, 5 chocolate bars. The estimated total is about $19.93. The register opens. Your mother receives 7 cents in change and places it in her purse instead of spending it on candy by the register. Those coins may join a few more for next week because the next trip has already begun in her mind. The cart could anchor 7 days because the meals were connected. Roast became hash. Chicken became soup. Bread became lunch and meatloaf filler. Bacon drippings seasoned cabbage and beans. Apples began as fruit and ended as dessert. Nothing had only one job. That is what $20 truly bought in 1961. It did not buy a fantasy cart overflowing without effort. It bought the raw material for a week of decisions. Your mother supplied the time, memory, patience, and restraint that no receipt could record. The larger meaning is simple. Your family was not held together by low prices alone. It was held together by your mother, who knew how to turn limits into routine and routine into the feeling of home. This week, try one small version of that skill. Before cooking one dinner, decide exactly how its leftovers will become tomorrow's lunch. Save 1 cup of broth or set aside 2 slices. Give the food a second purpose before the first meal is served. And in the comments, choose only one. Which brings back the stronger memory for you? A. The Sunday roast, or B. The peanut butter and jelly lunch?